Joined now by Vicki McKenna for our weekly Culture Cast segment. Vicki, thanks for your time again today.
Thank you, dude.
Well, we've got a real situation brewing here. We watch in horror as West Point, the American military, is being overrun by social justice warriors. Let's call them the Pink Brigade, who has commandeered the training of our future military. They have already made it a factual point of contention that if you're white, you may have to take a litmus test here to that you demonstrate that you don't support Donald Trump and insurrection. So the media is now talking about this, and we've got the police, the other force in America, which we'd like to think would look after our constitutional rights. The police are under assault. Talk about what's happening across the country with your local police.
Well, first, I mean, you're talking about the military and the police. Look at all of the institutions that Americans rely on to help insulate us from attacks on the concept of self-governance. The police, schools, the church, the military, and every single institution, be it an official government institution or a cultural institution, is being ripped apart. As for the police, this began in 2015 with the rise of the lie about Michael Brown in Ferguson. The left has been riding this and expanding their attempts to undercut this particular institution. And these institutions that I'm talking about are institutions that either protect traditional values or the concept of the rule of law, because the left needs to break apart our adherence to fair justice in order for them to accomplish ultimately what they want. So while you've got the attempt to import people who can become a permanent underclass and utilize democracy until it's no longer useful to keep Democrats in power. At the same time that's happening, you're seeing these institutional norms be completely destroyed, specifically the concept of the rule of law. And I think that's the 50,000-foot picture of what is going on with police. At the ground level, it is chaos, it is violence, it is riots, and there seems to be no way anybody can strategize to get ahead of what the next hit is going to be.
Well, and that's because the powers that be, and this is exclusively blue state governance, has decided that the rioters are right. When the rioters riot, we will not stop them. We will not check them. We will not send police into the street. We are not going to hinder them. We will fire police chiefs if they dare to suggest that police deserve due process as well. I mean, if you're a law enforcement agent, if you're a police officer, or if you're the chief of police or a leader of police in a state like that, you better be careful. You better not, your reflex better not be to defend your people, because they'll get rid of you, as we saw in Minneapolis, right?
Oh, I agree. I think you're talking about the city manager in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. The mayor fired the city manager in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, because he dared say out loud that the officer involved in the Daunte Wright shooting deserved due process. So you've got, again, going back to what I said about tear apart the concept of the rule of law. Our law is based in the United States Constitution. The First and the Fifth Amendment completely rejected by the mayor of Brooklyn Center, who, by the way, also just said that police officers should not be taking guns on traffic stops, should not have guns while they are making traffic stops, the most dangerous thing a police officer can do. But just essentially told the city manager and the entire state of Minnesota, I don't care about the First Amendment, your right to speak, nor do I care about the Fifth Amendment, your right to due process. So without anybody even pushing back, that happened. And it will continue, again, to go on like this because nobody wants to be the one to take the first accusation of white supremacy, racism, as if somehow keeping your mouth shut and your head down is going to help you avoid your complicity in systemic racism.
Well, it is remarkable, too, when you consider what's happening in Seattle and Portland and Minneapolis versus what's happening in Chicago, another big blue state. So apparently the American people have decided that 30, 40, 50, 70 people every weekend, black people, are going to be killed by other black people. And as long as the police aren't there trying to stop it, or heaven forbid, shooting black killers, well, then we'll live with that. We're willing to live with black carnage in major cities as long as that black carnage is not the result of police officers. Is that where we are now?
Indeed. Yeah, it's exactly where we are right now, and you can call it out. But that argument only works to say doesn't anybody care that, and again, I just saw a story today, 4 more people dead in Chicago, 42 more people shot in Chicago. Last weekend, I think it was 7 dead in Chicago and 86 people shot. The argument by throwing that information and that particular contrast up against the wall assumes that the people you're trying to convince actually care about Black lives. They don't. This isn't about Black lives. This is about chaos. This is about creating chaos and creating it in such a way that it is almost impossible to fight against. This is about tearing apart institutions so that ultimately the left can remake this nation in the vision of what? I don't know. They imagine they can do it better than our founders did, better than a constitutional republic. But that's what it's about. So we'll say, don't you care about Chicago? Obviously, you don't care about Black lives, or the deaths in Minneapolis. Don't you care about Black lives? And the left will say nothing except accuse you of racism. But the truth is, it's not about Black people dying or Black people living. This is about utilizing race to destroy democracy.
You mean it's not about Black real estate? Helping Marxist founders of Black Lives Matter buy 4 and 5 houses? It's not about trying to stimulate our housing market? After the break, Vicki, let's talk a little bit more about the broader national implications of what's happening to local police. Back with CultureCast and Vicki McKenna, talking in the first segment about just kind of where we find ourselves with police officers in America today. It's between a rock and a hard place. I have a theory I want to throw at you. It seems to me that any socialist takeover, any movement like we're seeing here to unstabilize a country, requires a national police force, not local police forces. You think about what's happening in the military. We talked about this at the opening of the last segment. Seems to me that the American military is not being trained to go fight Chinese or fight enemies across the globe. They are being culturally and politically trained to weed out white supremacists, which means white conservatives and Republicans. Yeah. And so it seems to me that what you're seeing in the works now is that the federal government under Biden has surrendered the idea that we're ever going to use these troops in the military in foreign wars. What we're going to do is replace local police with these highly politicized, political correct forces, maternity aviator suits and haircuts for transgender soldiers. This is going to be the force that will replace the local police. What do you think?
Well, I think the local police are just simply going to be co-opted under consent decrees from the federal government. And there's a number of police forces that have already seen that happen. Milwaukee police force has been under a consent decree. I believe Madison was under threat of a consent decree. And this is when the government essentially says, you're going to do X, Y, and Z because we have found you in violation of some, recreated idea of what civil rights are supposed to mean. But yeah, I think what you're seeing is a tell that at least in addition to the local law enforcement agencies, you are going to see the military now play a role in policing domestically the problems of and I'm going to use finger quotes, white supremacy, as has been identified. Anybody who does not believe in progressive ideas, anybody who doesn't believe in Marxism, anybody who doesn't believe in redistribution, anybody who doesn't believe in reparations, anyone who voted for Donald Trump, that's white supremacy. Anyone who defends the police or defends traditional values defends God. That's white supremacy. And so I think you're going to see, I think what the fear is that the Biden administration has set the stage for the military to become a partner with law enforcement to enforce law domestically. If I can say one other thing as well, we cheer the police as a nation. You see the media cheer the police when they're arresting people in church, or when they're arresting, dads who took their daughters to playgrounds that were cordoned off with police tape because of coronavirus, or who are issuing citations to coffee shops and shutting them down, or barber shops and shutting them down because they violated coronavirus rules. The media cheers the police. Or when you see someone like Ashley Babbitt gunned down as she's protesting in the Capitol, then we cheer the police. And I think that's interesting because it goes to what I think the left would like to see is the police used for, and that is to enforce their social control mechanisms and their social justice ideas, which I think goes back to what you were suggesting about what Biden wants the military to be.
Yeah, and go back to the so-called insurrection. You make a good point here. I want to draw it out a little bit. Boy, isn't the federal government, state government, isn't the media just really to this day 100% concerned about the biographies of the people who insurrected at the Capitol, right? We're still learning about these people. And the more we learn, the more we find out that they're not gun-toting right-wingers. Nevertheless, that's important, right? We must know who these people are. Donald Trump is responsible. We got to get their biographies on the record. We're portraying Mr. Right now as a parent, right? He was a parent of a young child. But talk about his real biography.
Well, he was wanted on a felony warrant. I believe this was the felony warrant for holding a woman at gunpoint and robbing her out of over $800. This is someone who had a felony record. He was someone who was considered a violent repeat offender. But yes, you're exactly right. We don't want to know anything about him. George Floyd was a drug addict who was sitting in the car of his drug dealer when police approached the vehicle. That's how he encountered police after he had been accused of passing phony money at a store, by the way, at the behest of his drug dealer. The drug dealer who isn't going to be forced to testify in the Derek Chauvin trial because he would incriminate himself on the stand. We're not supposed to know any of this stuff. Yes, and we're not also supposed to know, anything about any of the other offenders. But you're exactly right. If somebody voted for Donald Trump or somebody, posted on a QAnon Reddit or something like that, we are going to see the media use that to promote the propaganda that this nation is overrun by irredeemable white supremacists who somehow want to insurrect against the United States government with no guns and no clubs and no weapons of any kind. And we are expected to accept that as plausible.
Plausible, and you're racist if you don't go along with it, because you're already hearing
Correct.
that meme, right? If you dare to ask what the perp was doing when he was shot in these kind of instances like Milwaukee, well, that's a racist question. Meanwhile, under the radar, no one's talking about it. Just this past week, Jacob Blake, who was shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin by a police, triggering riots. The cop will have no discipline. It was a good police action. That's not getting the press that we got when we got the riots, right? When we find out that the cops did exactly what they were supposed to, no one wants to talk about it. Vicki, Culture Cast, thank you so much for your time today. These are important topics. I just hope people are listening.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Most of you know our show is being censored by big tech.
While this makes it harder to meet the cost of producing the show, that's part of it. It also demonstrates that we must be having tremendous success, or they wouldn't bother to try to shut us down.
If you like hearing truth and common sense with a love for freedom, please join the Patriot Club with a one-time $99 tax-deductible donation. And you'll get this sweet vessel of joy as part of a thank you for joining the Patriot Club.
Etched with the American flag and the words freedom never tasted so good.
All you have to do is visit patriotclub.us and become a Patriot member today.
That's patriotclub.us. Thank you and God bless.